It is indeed as if every tree in the countryside spoke to me, saying, "Holy, holy." What splendor! In such a woodland scene there is calm, calm in which to serve Him. And the celebrated second movement, the scene by the brook and its eternal flow, begins. And unlike the philosopher Rousseau, Beethoven's love of nature was profoundly religious. And in the very beginning, the flow is depicted by eighth notes in the strings, very gently. And the undulating effect is in the phrasing, with an unusual sort of accentuation. The subdominant harmony is very prominent there. There it is. And here, such blessed calm, Beethoven's reverence for nature. And in the fifth measure, the speed of this flowing motion increases. It doubles, like so. And thus eighth notes have now doubled in our 16th note, representing the murmur of the brook. And this continuous motion is maintained throughout the entire movement with only a few momentary suspensions of its motion. And the scoring of this accompaniment, second violins and violas, and this is very novel, two solo cellos using their mutes, creating a hushed, vibrant sound. Just two celli playing an octave below the entire second violin and viola sections. It's a magical sound which you hear right from the beginning. And here is the increase, the doubling of the speed of the flow. Barely audible. It's so hushed and murmury. And the way Beethoven voices this accompaniment is fascinating. The violins and violas play this pattern. They start each pair of notes with the higher of the two notes, while at the same time the two celli play this. They start each pair with the lower note. Etc. So they are continually mirroring one another. As close as you could possibly come in music to depicting a reflection in the water.
If you think about symphonies, I mean, we're studying symphonies now, and Larry also does other projects involving orchestral music and sometimes simpler, but you can really see how symphonies are basically, monuments of sound. There are definite layers, like you said, about we studied this very, very well. Let's talk a little bit about what he mentions in terms of the architecture of it. He uses two violins and violas and two solo celli with mutes on to produce this magical sound that you may hear straight from the beginning, this sort of blessed calm, right? That's all he uses, this sort of very thin but important layers of sound that create the opening. And I think, yes, it's about architecture, and it's also simultaneously about just enjoying it for what it is, but knowing what it is that you're enjoying is really great too.
Yeah, exactly. That's a very good point. I mean, we all can enjoy ice cream, but it's really good to know that there's some strawberry in there, or maybe some unusual rare fruit.
Yeah, and if we
It
talk
just makes it.
about food, yeah, that's exactly it. Like you go to a very fancy restaurant and you presented a plate of food. Sometimes, what was really interesting is, and what's more alike to classical music concerts is sort of you sit down and you have the program, but you have no idea how it sounds. You kind of know little hints. And I really love it when you go to a restaurant and they tell you a little bit more about what it is, that it's been aged. I know it sounds fancy and luxurious. It's been aged for so and so days. Is an ingredient from, the, I don't know, the woodlands of so and so, something very, very, hand picked or something. But then you come to appreciate it more. And I think this is what it is. What Larry's doing is really explaining what you're hearing. So when you do go and listen to it, you understand with more, perhaps, reverence, what it is that you're hearing.
Absolutely, it's in a way a difference. I mean, we are in nature right now, so a difference.
We are, yes. As you
yeah,
can see, we're in the same
exactly.
with the sun.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
difference is in going on a hike just by yourself.
Yes.
And trying your best to enjoy every moment of it, including the hardship of
Oh, yes,
carrying
the
your
pain of
backpack,
it, yeah.
the pain. But vice versa, going with someone who has been on that hike before, the person who knows all the twists and turns which are waiting for you, and maybe is able to draw your attention to the things you would otherwise have missed, and may potentially not be able to really fully immerse yourself in what that hike has to offer.
And as you heard, the tonic key of B flat major begins to move into the dominant key of F, where we now hear our secondary theme. There's the 4 chord, the subdominant chord, yes. The theme is played first by the flute. Then the bassoon extends the theme. And you also will hear the violins trilling. They decorate the music, little zephyrs, breezes, very delicate. This leads now to a grand climax in F major, pure F major, where we encounter something of a hemiola rhythm, dividing the gentle triple meter into smaller duple groupings. Another echoey sound of nature. And the descending melody returns. And we cadence in F major, the dominant key, and imperceptibly we find ourselves in the central development section.
Well, there you have it. The words that Beethoven, his quotes, of every woodland tree saying to me, "Holy, holy," and this reverence that he has for nature, which is, I mean, I never thought of Beethoven as a very religious man, but I think with nature he has a certain holy reverence towards it.
Yeah, Beethoven had a interesting and complicated relationship with religion. He's from the country which was at the time mostly Lutheran, and however, he was nominally Catholic, but not a frequent churchgoer and all of this stuff. Yet he created the Missa Solemnis. Yet he kept. Quotes from some of the Egyptian, sacred writing on his desk. So he was an explorer of various religious views, and definitely he had a lot to say about it, and he was exploring a lot and really looking for his own vocation in that direction, for sure. But definitely his relationship with the nature reflects his feelings, if not a conceptual approach, but his feelings about our power beyond our control.
Absolutely. I mean, when you think of the way he portrays storms, these kind of turbulent waters, perhaps, and even the magical serenity of nature, these brooks, we're talking about a scene by a stream or a brook in this particular part, as well as his movement. You can tell he adores it, not just in a way of it looks beautiful. It's not just an aesthetic thing, it's part of something that he reveres as a way to inspire him, I think. And also there's, like you said, there's no way to treat a storm, and especially in those days, except by reverence. You say, well, okay, like, you do what you will, and hopefully you'll go away soon. And it's the same in a way with this beauty that you can see. It's really magical how he manages to capture this. And I think Larry, with his sort of analytical skills, takes it apart in a very delicate way that allows us to enjoy what Beethoven uses to create these sort of atmospheric sounds.
And I want to mention the relative simplicity of Beethoven's orchestration thus far in this symphony. He uses pairs of flutes, oboes, clarinets, bassoons, and horns, and the strings. And that's all, accomplishing wonders, I would say. And the woodwinds really come to the fore in this movement, where Beethoven makes the most of the flute, oboe, and clarinet's natural resemblance to the singing of birds, which he will really exploit near the end of this movement. But until then, there's marvelous interplay of woodwind song with rising arpeggios. We've moved into the key of G major. There are delicate, airy trills in the violins, gentle pulsation of horns and bassoons, all floating above and around the flow of the strings. We hear the flute and oboe in dialogue, and then they combine in a little cadenza in thirds. And the descending theme will now appear. And then unexpected modulation from G major into E flat major. And the main theme will now return, now elaborated by the range and the agility of the solo clarinet, and the eternal flow continues. And the descending theme is used now to carry us through a variety of new tonal regions. flat major, and ultimately through this uplifting harmonic progression. And back to B flat major by way of this very expansive and lovely dominant seventh harmony.
I mean, let's talk about from the beginning how he, Beethoven, or Larry uses this thing about going deeper into the woods, right? With this kind of idea of using the development. And he really does do that. There's a darkness, there's a light. He uses key changes, very quick, in different tonal realms in order to achieve this. How does it make you feel listening to this, and how he uses the, like you said, the continuous flow of the strings to get you deeper into the woods? It's almost magical how he leads you in.
Yeah, it's always like following a fairy tale. He leads you into this journey through with the creek, as it starts as a brook, as a creek, and then takes the movement of its own. You get deeper and deeper into more and more sounds, and there's the assigned sounds to different species, different animals, and different birds and so forth, and then they also blend together. And the interesting thing is, you pointed out how Beethoven uses all the transitions from one key to another, which was unusual, especially in such a rapid succession. We're going from a key of F major, then we go into C flat major, which is an unusual key in its own. And
Exactly, yeah.
yeah, and then what oftentimes escapes even musicians just listening to the symphony, and I'm so glad Lawrence Rapchak brought it up, is those quote-unquote clusters. Now, we call clusters a dense collection of pitches when they're not necessarily harmonically organized, and they present a sound conflicting sound, are usually used by composers to represent some dramatic or conflicting or kind of emotion. Here, it's pretty amazing how Beethoven creates those unblending combinations of harmonies which are not meant to be played at the same time, especially if it's not a 21st century kind of music, yet they sound longing for that resolution, which comes 2 beats later, and at the same time they don't create that conflicting, emotionally striking sound in there. They just create a momentary breeze of wind.
There's a momentary expression, I think, is really beautiful, especially if you consider how if you go into nature, it's not like the bird calls are all singing constantly. It's not like they all know what a perfect third or perfect fourth or fifth are, or minor third, and they're not really blending like that. It's not sort of how singers may sing in an opera. Right, there's always this sort of dissonances, and there's calls, and if you go to a rainforest, there might be monkeys and other things calling out there. Nature doesn't rhyme with what we call consonants, really. If anything, it's a constantly dissonant way in which it happens, that I think he's taking inspiration from. And I think this is what these clusters, what I like about what Larry does is he uses a very kind of music theory of word, but adds a very meaningful way for us to understand it. And I think that really adds a depth to what we understand. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
it makes you listen for certain things which otherwise you wouldn't notice maybe so much. And they are really beautiful. Those combinations of clustering chords, and the way part of it is sustained from the previous measure, and then another part is layered on top of it. It's a very unique spot, and the way Beethoven created it is really incredible and beautiful to hear.
yeah.
But when you're just listening, glossing over, unless Larry takes you by hand and says, "Look,
Yeah.
look at this treasure there,"
Yeah.
you may not notice it. And this program is really peppered with those invitations to discovery, which work, of course, for people who don't know symphonies very well, but as a professional musician, I'm discovering a lot together
Yes,
there
of
with
course.
Larry as well.
And here is the recapitulation, and also the most complex scoring of this movement. When I led this work a few years ago, we spent a lot of time balancing all the layers of sound in this passage. First, the flow continues in the accompaniment. Second violins, violas, and celli. Then there are the horns and the second clarinet. They play this in octaves, slow moving. The bassoon and the first clarinet imitate one another in rising arpeggios. The oboes echo in the distance. And all of this happening at the same time, and over all of this, a single flute gently singing the main theme before being joined by the first violins. Here's how it all sounds. And even though we perceive all of this as the natural flow, the continuation of our wondrous journey, this is in fact a technically correct recapitulation of the opening third of the movement, now, as you expect, in the tonic key of B flat major. And as the music seamlessly transitions into the coda, we move into the subdominant key of E flat major for this exquisite passage that sighs, that exudes this rapturous sense of bliss and tranquility. And Beethoven's use of appoggiaturas there, very expressive as always, leaning on the other harmonies. They create some intensely gorgeous dissonances. Those are the actual clusters of sound created by the flutes and the oboes sustaining this against the appoggiaturas of the clarinets. So exquisite and intense. And there's the famous nature cadenza within the coda. And composers have always been fascinated with musical imitations of nature sounds, and birds in particular, and national identity has never been an issue. Here's Vivaldi's Italianate, spring breezes and cheerful birds. And prepare yourself, here is the unearthly beauty of the French zephyrs and nightingales of Jean-Philippe Rameau. And here the Germanic turtle doves, the violin and bassoon trills, in Haydn's great oratorio, The Creation. And now Beethoven uses 3 woodwind instruments to imitate the specific songs of 3 birds. Not just a generic sort of chirping, but an actual notated approximation of their song patterns. And he even writes their names into the score. The nightingale, played by the flute in a rhythm that's as close to free, unmeasured natural song as could be notated. And as the flute trills, the high oboe imitates the wachtel, the quail, combined with the familiar 2-note call of the cuckoo, played by 2 clarinets. And the movement ends in a state of hushed, serene beauty, with the final appearance of the familiar descending theme.
What he also does is he takes us back in time to different composers. Let's talk a little bit about the nature cadenza that's quite famous in there. And what's really interesting about what he does with this sort of nature cadenza is he takes inspiration probably from nature, the bird calls, and this is not the first time anyone's done it. It's not revolutionary, as he mentions. Vivaldi uses it. Jean-Philippe Rameau does this. Haydn uses it in his creation. Beethoven imitates other birds and quails in order to create this sense of this free cadenza. Cadenza is usually very associated with a soloist of sort, and this there is a soloist, but the soloist is a bird.
It's a trio of soloists.
Yeah.
There's 3 of them.
Yeah. And there's different birds that are just calling to one another, and I think that's so unique, and it tells a beautiful story, paints a wonderful picture without being too in our face about it. You can really sit back and enjoy it aesthetically, but you can also take it apart and understand it more like what we're doing, which is wonderful.
Exactly, and I like how Larry really keeps in perspective the technique, the compositional technique which Beethoven uses, and the meaning of it, the underlying plan, the underlying meaning of it, I haven't noticed before working with this program how the main theme of the entire movement is not really depicting any birds. It's a song which you could hear, the ti da 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 da. So that one, it could be a folk song, or it could be just from any piece of music created by man. When it's placed into those other sounds surrounding it, which are invoking, of course, the reminiscence of birds and other nature sounds, it really places man right in the midst of the nature. It makes that song really belong as part of the nature, which is a big philosophical discussion, of course, for Beethoven, for artists and philosophers, and for literature, for everyone. Always, and Beethoven, he has his own take on it. Man is part of nature, and this is the immersion. And in many other of his compositions, he has conflict and resolution, all of that. But in this particular symphony, it's that immersion which creates harmony.
As Beethoven wrote, "It's as if every tree in the countryside spoke to me, saying, 'Holy, holy.' Spiritual repose, renewal, even salvation, it would seem."